I, 26F, was standing at the altar looking at my husband, Mark. His eyes were full of love. The officiant was speaking, but his voice sounded far away. All I could focus on was the promise I was about to make. A promise to love and to cherish for the rest of my life. The room was quiet. Everyone was holding their breath. It was the moment I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. My dress was perfect. The flowers were perfect. Mark was perfect. And then the heavy oak doors at the back of the chapel creaked open. Every head turned. My head turned. Mark's head turned. A woman stood there, silhouetted for a moment against the bright afternoon light. She paused, letting everyone get a good look. It was my sister-in-law, Evelyn. She was late. Not just a little late, but an hour late. We were in the middle of our vows. She smiled, a slow, deliberate smile, and then she started walking down the aisle. She was not walking to a seat. She was walking like it was her aisle. And she was wearing a dress the color of a fire engine, a bright, screaming red. It was a floor-length gown, tight and covered in sequins. It was a dress for a Hollywood premiere, not a mid-afternoon wedding. My dress was a simple, elegant ivory. My bridesmaids were in a soft sage green. The mothers were in navy and silver. Every single guest knew the etiquette. You do not wear white, and you do not wear a color that screams for attention. Evelyn knew the rules better than anyone. She had helped me pick out the bridesmaid dresses. She had commented on how classic and understated the theme was. As she sashayed past the pews, I heard a whisper. It came from her. She leaned over to one of Mark's cousins and said something. The cousin's eyes went wide. Later, much later, I would find out what she said. But at that moment, all I knew was the burning shame. She was making a spectacle. She was ruining the most sacred moment of my life. She finally reached the front pew, where a spot next to her mother was waiting. She did not slide in quietly. She made a show of it, arranging her dress, fluffing her hair. My mother-in-law, Diane, just patted her hand, a proud little smile on her face. Mark squeezed my hand. I looked at him. He had a pained expression on his face. He gave me a tiny shake. Stiffened, I could not bring myself to embrace her. I gave her a curt nod and kept walking. My hand was gripping Mark so tightly my knuckles were white. He knew I was upset. He had to know. Once we were in the small room behind the chapel, waiting for the reception to start, I turned to him. "What was that?" I asked. My voice was shaking. "What was what?" he said, though he refused to meet my eyes. "Your sister," I said. "Arriving late, in that dress. Did you see her?" "Look, honey, it's Evelyn," he said with a sigh. "You know how she is. She loves to be the center of attention." "The center of attention? Mark, this is our wedding day," I said, my voice rising. "She is not the center of attention. I am the bride. We are the main characters today, not her." I know," he said, finally looking at me. "But please, let's not let her ruin it. Let's just have a good time at the reception." For me? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that she had already ruined it. But I looked at his face, and he just looked so desperate to keep the peace. I felt a surge of disappointment. He was my husband now. He was supposed to be on my side. But he was already asking me to swallow my feelings for the sake of his family. I took another deep breath. "Fine," I said, "but we are talking about this later." Just then, my best friend and maid of honor, Chloe, came into the room. She was holding 2 glasses of champagne. She took one look at my face and her smile vanished. "Hey," she said softly. "You okay?" I just shook my head, tears pricking my eyes. Chloe handed a glass to Mark. "Can you give us a minute?" she asked him. It was not a question. Mark nodded, relieved to escape. "Yeah, of course," he said. "I'll go check on things." He scurried out of the room. Chloe closed the door behind him and turned to me. She put the champagne down and gave me a huge hug. I finally let a few tears fall. "It's okay," she whispered. "Let it out." "She ruined it, Chloe," I sobbed. "She ruined the most important moment." "I know she did," she said, her voice firm. "What she did, Tara." She leaned in and said, "Someone has to be the main character, right?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The main character. She had actually said it. The audacity was breathtaking. It was not just a poor choice of dress, it was a calculated move, a statement. She was declaring that my wedding day was actually her show. She said that? I whispered, horrified. She did, Chloe confirmed. Tara looked mortified. But Evelyn just smirked, like she had just won something. I felt a new feeling replace the hurt. It was cold, hard anger. This was not just a slight. This was a declaration of war, and I was not going to let her win. Not anymore. I had spent the entire year of our engagement trying to befriend Evelyn. I had invited her to lunch. I had asked for her opinion on wedding details. I had complimented her, listened to her problems, and tried my best to build a bridge. Now I saw that she had been taking my kindness and using it to build a bonfire, which she had just lit in the middle of my wedding ceremony. The reception was a performance. I smiled. I danced. I laughed. But underneath it all, I was watching her. Evelyn was in her element. She held court at a table of Mark's relatives, telling loud, dramatic stories. She made a big show of dancing with every single one of Mark's groomsmen. She even tried to grab the microphone from the band singer at one point to dedicate a song to us. The band leader, a seasoned professional, politely but firmly shut her down. She made comments that were just on the edge of rude, so that if you called her out, she could claim she was joking. When we cut the cake, she said loudly, "Oh, I hope it's not dry." The last wedding cake I had was like sawdust. When I threw the bouquet, she shoved 2 younger cousins out of the way to try and catch it, even though she was already married. She did not catch it. A sweet 17-year-old girl did, and Evelyn pouted for a full 10 minutes. Mark, for his part, tried to run interference. He would gently steer her away from the dance floor when she was being too disruptive. He would change the subject when she started to criticize the food. But he never confronted her. He never said, "Evelyn, that's enough." He was managing, said, trying to sound cheerful. I just looked at him. "Was it?" I asked. "Yeah, I think so," he said, his voice less certain now. "Everyone seemed to have a good time. Everyone except the bride," I said flatly. He sighed. "Look, I'm sorry about Evelyn. I really am. I'll talk to her." "When?" I pressed. "When will you talk to her? Tomorrow? Next year? Or never?" "I will talk to her," he insisted. "I promise. Let's just not let this ruin our wedding night." But it already had. The magic was gone. We got to the hotel suite. It was beautiful. There were rose petals on the bed and a bottle of champagne on ice. But I felt nothing. I felt drained. I felt disrespected. And I felt deeply, deeply disappointed in my new husband. We did not talk about it again that night. We went to bed in a silence that was colder than any argument. The image of that red dress was burned into my mind. It was a symbol of everything that was wrong, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that this was far from over. Our honeymoon was supposed to be 2 weeks in Italy. It was a trip we had planned for months, but the shadow of the wedding hung over us. Mark was trying too hard to be cheerful. He kept pointing out beautiful sights, buying me little gifts, telling me how much he loved me. But he would not talk about the one thing that was sitting between us like a brick wall. He would not talk about Evelyn. Every time I tried to bring it up, he would shut me down. "Can we please not talk about my sister on our honeymoon?" he would say. "Let's just enjoy this." But I could not enjoy it. How could I? My husband had shown me that when it came to a choice between my feelings and his sister's bad behavior, he would choose to manage the situation rather than solve it. He would choose to keep the peace rather than defend his own wife. On the 4th day, we were sitting at a small cafe in Florence. I decided I could not take it anymore. "Mark, we have to talk about this," I said, putting my coffee cup down. "About what?" he said, though he knew perfectly well. "About Evelyn," I said, "and about how you handled it, or rather, how you did not handle it." He let out a long as if that explained everything. "That's just how she is. She's always been dramatic." That's not an excuse, I said. And I'm your wife now. That's supposed to mean something. It's supposed to mean that I come first, not your sister's need for attention. We argued for nearly an hour, right there in the middle of that beautiful Italian square. People stared. We did not care. It was the first real fight of our marriage, and it was a bad one. In the end, nothing was resolved. He accused me of being dramatic. I accused him of being a coward. We walked back to the hotel in stony silence. The rest of the honeymoon was a tense, miserable affair. We were just two people going through the motions. When we got back home, I felt a sense of dread. I knew I had to see his family again soon. I knew I would have to face Evelyn. I did not know how I was going to do it. Mark kept his promise and said he talked to her. I found out later what that talk consisted of. He called her and said, "Hey, Sarah was a little upset about the dress." Evelyn had apparently launched into a tirade about how I was being oversensitive and trying to turn him against his own family. Mark, in his infinite wisdom, had decided the best course of action was to back down and apologize for upsetting her. He had apologized. To her. I only found this out because I overheard him talking to his mother on the phone. "Yeah, Mom, I smoothed it over with Ev," he said. "I think Sarah is just stressed from the wedding. She'll get over it." I felt my blood run cold. He was not on my side. He was on theirs. He was managing me now, just like he managed his sister. He was telling his mother I was just being emotional. He was invalidating my feelings to his entire family. I walked into the room and he hung up the phone quickly. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Just my mom," he said, trying to smile. "She says hi." "Did you tell her I was just stressed and I'll get over it?" I asked. His face paled. "You heard that?" "I heard it," I said. "So that's what this
Card was from the wedding photographer, with a note that said, "Here are the raw, unedited photos from the ceremony. The final album will be ready in a few weeks." I had forgotten about this. I took the memory card and put it into my laptop. I started clicking through the photos. There were pictures of me getting ready, pictures of Mark with his groomsmen, pictures of the guests arriving, and then there were the pictures of the ceremony. The photographer had captured the moment perfectly. The open doors, the silhouette of Evelyn, the shocked faces of the guests. It was all there, in high-definition clarity. As I clicked through, my anger grew. But then I saw something else. In the background of one of the photos, taken right after Evelyn had sat down, I could see her talking to her mother, Diane. Diane was holding something in her hand. It was small and white. I zoomed in. It was a little box. A ring box. It looked exactly like the box that our rings were supposed to be in. Our ring bearer, my little nephew, had carried a decorative pillow with fake rings on it. The real rings were supposed to be with the best man, but I remembered a moment of panic right before the ceremony. The best man, Mark's friend David, had come to me in a fluster. He could not find the rings. He had put the box on a small table in the back room, and it was gone. We had all searched for a frantic 10 minutes. Mark was getting agitated. We were about to be late. Just as I was about to have a full-blown meltdown, my bridesmaid Chloe had found them. She had said they were on the floor, under a chair. We had all been so relieved that we had not questioned it. Now, looking at this photo, a sick feeling started to grow in my stomach. Why would Diane be holding a ring box that looked exactly like ours? And why was she looking so smug? I scrolled to the next photo. It was taken a few moments later. Diane was now handing the box to Evelyn. Evelyn was slipping it into her tiny, sequined purse, and she was smiling. A truly vicious, triumphant smile. My heart started to pound. Number. It could not be. They would not do that. They would not steal the wedding rings just to cause a moment of panic and chaos.
That was not just attention-seeking. That was cruel. That was sabotage.
You even more. Tell me, I insisted. I didn't find them under a chair, she said softly. I saw Evelyn drop them. I was coming back from the restroom and I saw her walk out of the room where David had left them. She had her back to me, but she fumbled with her purse and the box fell out. It slid under a chair in the hallway. She didn't notice. She just kept walking. I waited for her to go and then I picked them up. I made up the story about finding them so I wouldn't cause a huge fight right before you walked down the aisle. I sank down onto the floor, the laptop in front of me, the picture of Evelyn and her mother on the screen. Everything clicked into place. The late arrival, the red dress, the main character comment. And now this, the stolen rings. It was a coordinated attack. It was planned. "Thank you for telling me," I said to Chloe. My voice was eerily calm. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "Oh, I'm better than okay," I said, a strange sense of clarity washing over me. The hurt was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was a cold, pure, unadulterated rage. I know what I have to do now. I had proof. I had a photograph, and I had a witness. They thought they were so clever. They thought they had gotten the way with it. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The war was on, and I was going to win. My first step was to secure the evidence. I saved the photograph to my computer, my phone, and a cloud drive. I labeled it something innocuous. Vacation Pics 2023. No one would think to look there. Then I called Chloe back. "I need a favor," I said, my voice steady. "A big one." "Anything," she said without hesitation. "I need you to write down everything you saw," I explained. "Exactly what happened with the rings. Every detail. Who was there, what time it was, what she was wearing, what you saw her do. Sign it and date it." "You want a written statement?" she asked, a note of surprise in her voice. "Are you taking them to court?" "Not yet," I said, "but I need to be prepared. This is my leverage. I need it together, especially after that little hiccup a few weeks ago." "Hiccup?" the catering manager asked, confused. "What hiccup, miss?" "Oh, you know," I said, trying to sound breezy. "The call to change the menu. I'm so glad we got it sorted out." There was a pause. "Ma'am, we never received a call to change the menu," he said. My blood ran cold. "Are you sure?" I asked, because I was told there was a call from someone in the family trying to switch the main course to the cheaper chicken option instead of the filet mignon we had chosen. "Let me check the notes," he said. I heard him typing. "Ah, here it is. We did get a call. On the 10th of last month, a woman claiming to be the groom's sister. She said there was a budget issue and you wanted to switch to the chicken, but the name she gave was Evelyn, and your contact information listed you, Sarah, as the only person authorized to make changes. So we disregarded the request and sent an email to you to confirm. Did you not receive it?" I thought back. The 10th of last month. I had been overwhelmed with last-minute details. I checked my email, searching for that date. There it was. An email from the caterer with the subject, "Menu Change Request." I had never seen it. It had been read and deleted. I never deleted emails. Mark, however, sometimes used my laptop. And Evelyn had been over at our apartment that week, helping me address invitations. She could have easily seen the email pop up and deleted it before I had a chance to see it. "I see it now," I told the manager. "Thank you for being so diligent. You were right not to make the change." "Of course, ma'am," he said. "We have policies for a reason, to prevent exactly this kind of thing." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. She had tried to change the menu. She had tried to make our wedding reception cheaper, less impressive, and she had done it behind my back, using my own computer to cover her tracks. What else had she done? I called the band leader next. Again, I started with thanks and praise. Then I brought up Evelyn's attempt to grab the microphone. "She's such a character, isn't she?" I said with a fake laugh. "That's one word for it."
the band leader said dryly. We get one at every wedding.
New one for me. I emailed your husband Mark to confirm since her tone was a little strange. He wrote back and said to ignore the list completely and stick to the one you two had sent me. I felt a wave of relief that Mark had at least done that, but the relief was quickly replaced by more anger. She had tried to turn our first dance into a joke. She had tried to fill our reception with songs about heartbreak and betrayal. The cruelty was astounding. It was so much deeper than I had ever imagined. I thanked the band leader and hung up. I sat in silence for a long time, just processing the information. This was a pattern, a systematic campaign of sabotage. She had not just wanted to upstage me, she had wanted to ruin the entire event. She wanted it to be cheap, tacky, and miserable. She wanted me to be humiliated at every turn. That night, Chloe's email arrived. It was a detailed, 2-page document outlining everything she had witnessed with the rings. She had even gotten another bridesmaid, who had been standing nearby, to sign it as a witness. It was perfect. I now had 2 pieces of undeniable proof: the photograph of the ring box exchange and a signed witness statement about the dropped rings. And I had the verbal confirmations from the caterer and the band leader. My plans started to form. It was not enough to just confront her. A simple, "I know what you did," would result in denials, gaslighting, and Mark trying to keep the peace. No, I needed to do this in a way that she could not escape. I needed to do it in front of an audience. I needed to dismantle her public image, piece by piece, right in front of the people whose approval she craved the most, her family. The perfect opportunity was coming up. My mother-in-law Diane's birthday was in 3 weeks. She was having a big family dinner at her house. Everyone would be there. Mark, Evelyn, Diane, my father-in-law, and all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. It was the perfect stage. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing. I did not say a word to Mark about what I had discovered. I played the part of the dutiful wife. I was calm, pleasant, and agreeable. I even apologized to him for being so emotional after the honeymoon. "I'm sorry," I told him one evening. "You were right. The wedding was stressful." Birthday. I wrapped it perfectly. On the outside, I was the perfect daughter-in-law. On the inside, I was a general preparing for battle. The night of the party arrived. I put on a simple, elegant black dress, nothing that could be criticized. I did my makeup carefully. I wanted to look calm and confident. When I walked out of the bedroom, Mark beamed at me. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," I said, smiling back. "Ready to go?" As we drove to his parents' house, he was chatty and relaxed for the first time in weeks. He thought we were past it. He thought I had accepted my place in his family's dysfunctional dynamic. He had no idea that I was about to burn that dynamic to the ground. When we walked in, the house was buzzing with conversation. Evelyn was, of course, holding court in the center of the living room. She was wearing a ridiculously flamboyant silver jumpsuit. She looked like a disco ball. She saw me and her smile tightened for a fraction of a second before becoming overly bright. "Sarah, you made it!" she exclaimed, as if my attendance was a surprise. She air-kissed me, careful not to actually touch me. "Love the dress." So simple. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said, my voice sweet as sugar. I didn't want to take any attention away from the birthday girl. I looked pointedly at her mother, Diane, who was wearing a tasteful navy blue dress. Diane gave a tight little smile. "Point one to me." We mingled for a while. I was polite to everyone. I made small talk with aunts and uncles. I helped Diane in the kitchen. I played my part perfectly. Mark watched me with a proud look on his face. "See?" he seemed to be thinking. "She's fitting in." Dinner was served. We all sat around the large dining table. The conversation was light. People talked about work, about their kids, about the weather. I waited. I ate my food slowly. I listened. I was waiting for the right moment. The moment came after the main course, just before the cake was brought out. There was a lull in the conversation. It was time. I cleared my throat softly. "I was just thinking about the wedding," I said, my voice light and conversational. "It was such a beautiful day, wasn't it, Diane?" corrected gently. And you arrived an hour late, right in the middle of our vows. But I'm sure that was just an accident. The traffic was terrible, she snapped. Of course, I said. And I'm sure it was just a coincidence that you happened to tell Cousin Tara that you needed to be the main character. Chloe must have misheard you. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Tara, who was sitting further down the table, suddenly found her dinner plate incredibly interesting. I never said that, Evelyn hissed. That's not what Chloe says, I replied calmly. But you know, a dress, a few words, that's forgivable. We all make mistakes. I'm willing to let that go. Mark looked relieved again. He thought this was the end of it. He thought I was just airing a small grievance and then moving on. He was wrong. What's harder to forgive? I continued, my voice losing its light conversational tone and becoming colder. Is deliberate sabotage. The table went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. What are you talking about, Sarah? My father-in-law Tom asked, looking concerned. I'm talking about the fact that someone tried to ruin our wedding, I said, my eyes locked on Evelyn. For example, someone called the caterer and tried to change our menu to a cheaper option, pretending to be me. That's ridiculous, Diane said with a nervous laugh. Who would do that? Someone named Evelyn, apparently, I said. The caterer has a record of the call. They were smart enough not to make the change without my authorization, which, funnily enough, the caller tried to bypass by deleting the confirmation email from my computer. Evelyn's face was now a mask of fury. You're lying, she spat. You're making this all up because you're jealous of my relationship with my brother. Am I? I asked. Am I also making up the playlist you sent to the band? The one full of breakup songs? The one that requested our first dance be You're So Vain? Mark was staring at me, his mouth slightly open. He knew about the playlist. He was the one who had told the band leader to ignore it. He had never told me. He had hidden it from me again to keep the peace. His face told me everything. He knew I was not lying. Mark? Diane said, her voice thought we had lost them. But then, miraculously, Chloe found them. Or so I thought. I paused, letting the suspense build. I looked directly at Evelyn, whose face was now sheet white. But Chloe didn't just find them, I continued. Chloe saw you, Evelyn. She saw you coming out of the room where the rings were. She saw you drop the box. You were in such a hurry to make your grand entrance that you didn't even notice. That is a lie, Evelyn screamed, standing up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Your little friend is a liar. Is she? I asked calmly. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Because this is a signed statement from Chloe, detailing everything she saw. And it's co-signed by another bridesmaid who saw it too. Would you like me to read it aloud? Evelyn stared at the paper in my hand as if it were a snake. She was speechless. But that's not even the best part, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. I pulled out my phone. You see, you weren't working alone, were you? I looked at my mother-in-law, Diane. Her face was a mixture of fear and rage. What are you implying? Diane demanded, her voice shaking. I'm not implying anything, I said. I'm stating a fact. I turned my phone around and showed the screen to my father-in-law, Tom, who was sitting next to me. On the screen was the photograph, the crystal-clear, high-definition photograph of Diane handing the ring box to Evelyn in the church pew. Tom squinted at the phone. His eyes widened. He looked from the phone to his wife, then to his daughter. The color drained from his face. Diane? He whispered. What is this? It's nothing, Diane cried. It's a trick. It's photoshopped. Is it? I said. Because the wedding photographer, who is a neutral third party, will happily testify that it is an unedited raw photo from his camera. He sent me all the raw files. I swiped to the next photo, the one of Evelyn slipping the box into her purse with that triumphant smile. This one is my personal favorite. It really captures your good side, Evelyn. The room was in chaos. Evelyn was sobbing, screaming that I was a monster who was tearing the family apart. Diane was yelling that the photos were fake and that I was a wife and daughter, his eyes full of a deep, profound disappointment. Is this true? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Did you two do this? Diane started to stammer. Tom, she's twisting things. Is it true? He repeated, his voice louder this time. Evelyn finally broke. She deserved it, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. She came in and took everything. She took Mark. She thinks she's so perfect with her perfect little life. I just wanted to knock her down a peg. I wanted her to know that she's not better than us. The confession hung in the air, ugly and raw. It was everything I had suspected. Jealousy, pure, simple, and toxic. Tom just stared at his daughter, his face unreadable. Then he turned to his wife. "And you?" he asked. "You helped her?" "You, the mother of the groom, helped to sabotage your own son's wedding?" Diane burst into tears. "I was just helping my baby," she sobbed. "Evelyn was so upset. I just wanted to support her." "Support her?" Tom said, his voice laced with disbelief. "You call this support? This is sickness. This is poison." He looked around the table at the shocked faces of his family. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He was not looking at his wife or daughter. He was looking at me. "Sarah, I am so sorry." Then he turned his gaze back to Evelyn and Diane. "You two have humiliated this family," he said, his voice cold as stone. "You have disrespected Sarah. You have disrespected Mark, and you have disrespected me. You will both apologize to Sarah right now. A real apology." Evelyn just stared at him, her face swollen and red from crying. "No," she whispered. "What did you say?" Tom asked. "I said no," she screamed. "I will not apologize to her. She's the one who ruined everything by making this a big deal." Tom's face hardened. "Fine," he said. He pointed to the door. "Then get out." "Get out of my house." "Daddy, no!" Evelyn cried. "Get out," he repeated. "And you," he said, turning to Diane, "you can go with entire life." And it had culminated in this spectacular disaster. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I am so sorry." "I know," I said. I did not say, "I told you so." I did not say, "You should have listened to me." I did not have to. The truth had done the work for me. The party broke up quickly after that. Aunts and uncles made their excuses and left, murmuring apologies to me and Mark as they went. Soon it was just the three of us. Me, Mark, and his father, Tom. Tom sat down heavily in his chair. He looked 10 years older. "I don't know what to say," he said, shaking his head. "I knew Evelyn was difficult, but I never imagined this. And Diane, to go along with it. It's not your fault, Tom," I said gently. "It is," he said. "I let it happen. We all did. We all coddled her, made excuses for her. We created this monster, and you were the one who had to pay the price." He looked at Mark. "Your mother and sister owe you two more than just an apology. They owe you for the parts of your wedding they ruined." He stood up and went to his study. He came back with a checkbook. He wrote something down and tore out the check. He handed it to me. "What is this?" I asked. "It's half the cost of your wedding," he said. "I'll get the other half from Diane. You two deserve a do-over, a new honeymoon, something that isn't tainted by this." I tried to protest, but he was firm. "Take it," he said. "Please, it's the least I can do." I looked at the check. It was for a significant amount of money. It was more than just a gesture. It was restitution. Mark and I drove home in silence. It was not an angry silence this time. It was a heavy, thoughtful one. When we got inside our apartment, he finally broke down. He sat on the sofa and just sobbed, his whole body shaking. I sat down next to him and, for the first time in weeks, I put my arm around him. "I failed you," he said through his tears. "I'm your husband and I was supposed to protect you, and I failed." I let them hurt you. I chose them over you. Oh,
It was late, but it was finally here. Okay, I said. Okay, we can start there. The days that followed were strange. The family was fractured. Tom was true to his word. He told Diane she could come home, but their relationship was strained to the breaking point. He insisted she go to therapy with him. As for Evelyn, she was completely cut off. Tom blocked her number. He told her she was not welcome in his home until she had paid me back for her share of the wedding costs and given me a sincere written apology. Evelyn, of course, did neither. Instead, she went on a smear campaign. She called relatives and told them I was a gold-digging monster who had manipulated her poor, senile father. It did not work. I had already won over the court of public opinion at that dinner party. Everyone had seen the proof. They had heard her confession. Her frantic attempts to paint me as the villain only made her look more unhinged. A few cousins called me to tell me what Evelyn was saying. They were not calling to accuse me. They were calling to warn me and to tell me they were on my side. "We always knew she was a drama queen," one cousin said, "but we never thought she was this hateful." "I'm so sorry you had to deal with that." Mark started making good on his promises. We found a couples therapist. In our first session, he laid everything out: his fear of confrontation, his lifelong habit of placating his sister, his failure to stand up for me. He took full ownership of his part in the disaster. It was a painful process, but it was a healing one. Slowly, piece by piece, he started to earn back my trust. He was the one who dealt with his mother. Diane called him, crying, a week after the dinner. She begged him to talk to me, to get me to forgive and forget so things could go back to normal. Mark's response was colder than I had ever heard him be. "There is no back to normal, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "You and Evelyn created a new normal, one where Sarah and I are a team, and you are on the outside until you can prove you deserve to be let back in. You need to apologize to Sarah, not to me, not through me, to her. And it needs to be real." Diane did eventually call me. Her apology and with me, if I would let her. At the end of the letter was a check for her half of the wedding costs, just as Tom had promised. I showed the letter to Mark. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think it's a start," he said, "but it's up to you. I will support whatever you decide." That was the man I had married, the man who was finally on my team. "I think we can have dinner with her and your dad," I said. "Just the four of us." Evelyn was a different story. She never apologized. She never paid a dime. She doubled down on her victim narrative. She lost her friends, who grew tired of her constant drama. She and her husband eventually divorced, after he got tired of her antics and her constant need to be the center of a negative universe. The last I heard, she was working a dead-end job and living in a tiny apartment, still complaining to anyone who would listen about how her cruel sister-in-law had ruined her life. We used the money from Tom and Diane to go on a new honeymoon. We went to Hawaii. It was everything our first honeymoon should have been: relaxing, romantic, and free of any drama. We came back refreshed and more united than ever. Our life is quiet now. It is peaceful. We have a strong, healthy marriage built on a foundation that was tested by fire and came out stronger. We see Tom and Diane regularly. Our relationship with them is not perfect, but it is honest. The excuses and the enabling are gone. They treat me with respect. They treat me like family. Sometimes, when I'm feeling particularly petty, I take out the photo of Evelyn in her red dress. I look at that smug, arrogant smile. And then I look at the signed confession from Chloe, the bank statement with the cashed checks from her parents, and the happy photos from our second honeymoon. She wanted to be the main character. She wanted to be the star of the show. In the end, she was. She was the star of her own downfall, and I was the one who got to write the ending. She thought she was taking my perfect day from me, but what she really did was give me the greatest wedding gift of all. She exposed the rot in my new family and gave my husband and me the chance to build something real and strong in its place. She taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, Peace is not worth the price of your own dignity. Sometimes you have to burn it all down. Would get angry, and I would be the one to smooth things over. I would calm my dad down, I would make excuses for Evelyn, and I would tell my mom it was all okay. And what did you get out of that role? The therapist asked. Mark thought for a moment. I got to avoid conflict, he admitted. I hate conflict. So I just did whatever it took to make it stop. Even if it meant sacrificing your own needs, or Sarah's, she pressed. He looked at me, his eyes full of regret. Yes, he said softly. Even then, it was a breakthrough. He finally saw that his peacekeeping was actually a form of cowardice. He was not keeping peace, he was enabling abuse. From that day on, something shifted in him. He started to actively practice setting boundaries. The first real test came a few months later. It was Christmas. Tom had made it clear that Evelyn was not invited to the family gathering unless she met his conditions, which she had not. The day before Christmas Eve, Evelyn called Mark. I was in the room and heard his side of the conversation. No, Evelyn, you can't come over, he said, his voice steady. Dad was very clear about the rules. There was a pause as she presumably launched into a tirade. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas, Mark said. Your actions have consequences. This is one of them. Another pause. I could imagine her crying, trying to manipulate him. The old Mark would have caved instantly. No, I am not being cruel, he said. I am being firm. You owe my wife an apology and you owe our family the money you cost us. Until you do that, you are not welcome. She must have said something about me because Mark's tone hardened. Do not speak about Sarah that way, he said, his voice dangerously low. She is my wife. This conversation is over. He hung up the phone. He looked at me, his chest rising and falling. That was hard, he said. You did it, I said, a wave of pride washing over me. You did it perfectly. He had chosen me, unconditionally. It felt better than any apology ever could. We went to his parents' house for Christmas. It was quiet. It was calm. The frantic, attention-seeking energy that Evelyn always brought was gone. We had a peaceful, lovely dinner. Diane was still a little awkward around me, but she was trying. Villain. I had expected to tear the family apart and maybe even lose my husband. But instead, by telling the truth, I had inadvertently started a healing process. Life settled into a new rhythm. Mark and I grew closer than ever. We learned how to communicate, how to fight fair, and how to be a true partnership. He became my fiercest defender and my biggest champion. The memory of the red dress and the stolen rings still stung sometimes, but it no longer had power over me. It was just a scar from a battle that I had won. About a year after the wedding, Chloe got married. I was her maid of honor. It was a beautiful, joyful day. As I was helping her get ready, she turned to me. I was thinking about your wedding the other day, she said. Oh God, don't! I laughed. No, seriously, she said. I was thinking about Evelyn. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that photo? If I hadn't seen her drop the rings? I thought about it for a moment. I think my marriage would be over, I said honestly. I couldn't have lived like that, constantly being disrespected and having my husband not support me. I would have eventually left him. So, in a weird way, Chloe said, a slow smile spreading across her face, that horrible woman in her stupid red dress actually saved your marriage. I laughed. It was a dark, twisted thought, but it was true. You know what? I think you're right, I said. Her sabotage had been the catalyst for change. Her cruelty had been the fire that had burned away all the lies and dysfunction, leaving behind something stronger and more honest. It was the ultimate irony. In her desperate attempt to be the main character in my story, she had only succeeded in making my happy ending possible. We never saw Evelyn again. The family ties were severed completely. Years passed. Mark and I built a beautiful life together. We bought a house, we got a dog. We were happy, truly, deeply happy. One day, Mark came home from a business trip. He had been in a city a few states away. He looked thoughtful. I saw her, he said quietly. I knew immediately who he meant. You saw Evelyn? Yeah, he said. I was in a coffee shop and she was a waitress there. She did He came over and wrapped his arms around me. This is my life now. You are my life. And that was the end of it. The ghost of the woman in the red dress was finally laid to rest. She was no longer a character in our story, not even as a villain. She was just a footnote, a cautionary tale about what happens when you let jealousy consume you. She was a waitress in a coffee shop, forever trapped in her own bitter narrative, while we were at home, living our happy ending. She had wanted to be the main character, and she had gotten her wish. She was the main character of a very small, very sad story, all of her own making. And I was no longer fighting for my place. I was simply living it, peacefully and joyfully, with the man who had learned to put me first. That was the real victory.